Chapter 4. The desire to flee which Jenny experienced upon seeing the senator again was attributable to what she considered the disgrace of her position. She was ashamed to think that he, who thought so well of her, should discover her doing so common a thing. Girl-like, she was inclined to imagine that his interest in her depended upon something else than her mere personality. When she reached home, Mrs. Gerhardt had heard of her flight from the other children. "What was the matter with you, anyhow?" asked George, when she came in. "Oh, nothing," she answered, but immediately turned to her mother and said, "Mr. Brander came by and saw us." "Oh, did he?" softly exclaimed her mother. "He's back, then. What made you run, though, you foolish girl?" "Well, I didn't want him to see me." "Well, maybe he didn't know you anyhow," she said, with a certain sympathy for her daughter's predicament. "Oh, yes, he did too," whispered Jenny. "He called after me 3 times. 3 or 4 times." Mrs. Gerhardt shook her head. "What is it?" said Gerhardt, who had been hearing the conversation from the adjoining room and now came out. "Oh, nothing," said the mother, who hated to explain the significance which the senator's personality had come to have in their lives. "A man frightened them when they were bringing the coal." The arrival of the Christmas presents later in the evening threw the household into an uproar of excitement. Neither Gerhardt nor the mother could believe their eyes when a grocery wagon halted in front of their cottage and a lusty clerk began to carry in the gifts. After failing to persuade the clerk that he had made a mistake, the large assortment of good things was looked over with very human glee. "Just you never mind," was the clerk's authoritative words. "I know what I'm about. Gerhardt, isn't it? Well, you're the people." Mrs. Gerhardt moved about, rubbing her hands in her excitement, and giving vent to an occasional, "Well, isn't that nice now?" Gerhardt himself was melted at the thought of the generosity of the unknown benefactor, and was inclined to lay it all out to the goodness of a great local mill owner who knew him and wished him well. Mrs. Gerhardt tearfully suspected the source, but said nothing. Jenny knew, by instinct, the author of it all. The afternoon of the day after Christmas, Brander encountered the mother in the hotel, Jenny having been left at home to look after the house. "How do you do, Mrs. Gerhardt?" he exclaimed genially, extending his hand. "How did you enjoy your Christmas?" Poor Mrs. Gerhardt took it nervously. Her eyes filled rapidly with tears. "There, there," he said, patting her on the shoulder. "Don't cry. You mustn't forget to get my laundry today." "Oh, no, sir," she returned, and would have said more had he not walked away. From this on, Gerhardt heard continually of the fine senator at the hotel. How pleasant he was, and how much he paid for his washing. With the simplicity of a German working man, he was easily persuaded that Mr. Brander must be a very great and a very good man. Jenny, whose feelings needed no encouragement in this direction, was more than ever prejudiced in his favor. There was developing in her that perfection of womanhood, the full mold of form, which could not help but attract any man. Already she was well built and tall for a girl. Had she been dressed in the trailing skirts of a woman of fashion, she would have made a fitting companion for a man the height of the senator. Her eyes were wondrously clear and bright, her skin fair, and her teeth white and even. She was clever, too, in a sensible way, and by no means deficient in observation. All that she lacked was training in the assurance of which the knowledge of utter dependency despoils one. But the caring of washing and the compulsion to acknowledge almost anything as a favor put her at a disadvantage. Nowadays, when she came to the hotel upon her semi-weekly errand, Senator Brander took her presence with easy grace, and to this she responded. He often gave her little presents for herself, or for her brothers and sisters, and he talked to her so unaffectedly that finally the overawing sense of the great difference between them was brushed away, and she looked upon him more as a generous friend than as a distinguished senator. He asked her once how she would like to go to a seminary, thinking all the while how attractive she would be when she came out. Finally, one evening, he called her to his side. "Come over here, Jenny," he said, "and stand by me." She came, and moved by a sudden impulse, he took her hand. "Well, Jenny," he said, studying her face in a quizzical and interrogative way, "what do you think of me, anyhow?" "Oh," she answered, looking consciously away, "I don't know. What makes you ask me that?" "Oh, yes, you do," he returned. "You have some opinion of me. Tell me now, what is it?" "No, I haven't," she said innocently. "Oh, yes, you have," he went on, pleasantly, interested by her transparent evasiveness. "You must think something of me. Now, what is it?" "Do you mean, do I like you?" she asked, frankly, looking down at the big mop of black hair, well streaked with gray, which hung about his forehead, and gave an almost leonine cast to his fine face. "Well, yes," he said, with a sense of disappointment. She was barren of the art of the coquette. "Why, of course I like you," she replied prettily. "Haven't you ever thought anything else about me?" he went on. "I think you're very kind," she went on, even more bashfully. She realized now that he was still holding her hand. "Is that all?" he asked. "Well," she said with fluttering eyelids, "isn't that enough?" He looked at her, and the playful, companionable directness of her answering gaze thrilled him through and through. He studied her face in silence while she turned and twisted, feeling, but scarcely understanding the deep import of his scrutiny. "Well," he said at last, "I think you're a fine girl. Don't you think I'm a pretty nice man?" "Yes," said Jeannie promptly. He leaned back in his chair and laughed at the unconscious drollery of her reply. She looked at him curiously and smiled. "What made you laugh?" she inquired. "Oh, your answer," he returned. "I really ought not to laugh, though. You don't appreciate me in the least. I don't believe you like me at all." "But I do, though," she replied earnestly. "I think you're so good." Her eyes showed very plainly that she felt what she was saying. "Well," he said, drawing her gently down to him. Then at the same instant he pressed his lips to her cheek. "Oh!" she cried, straightening up, at once startled and frightened. It was a new note in their relationship. The senatorial quality vanished in an instant. She recognized in him something that she had not felt before. He seemed younger, too. She was a woman to him, and he was playing the part of a lover. She hesitated, but not knowing just what to do, did nothing at all. "Well," he said, "did I frighten you?" She looked at him, but moved by her underlying respect for this great man, she said with a smile, "Yes, you did. I did it because I like you so much." She meditated upon this a moment and then said, "I think I'd better be going." "Now then," he pleaded, "are you going to run away because of that?" "No," she said, moved by a curious feeling of ingratitude. "But I ought to be going. They'll be wondering where I am." You're sure you're not angry about it?" "No," she replied, and with more of a womanly air than she had ever shown before. It was a novel experience to be in so authoritative a position. It was so remarkable that it was somewhat confusing to both of them. "You're my girl, anyhow," the senator said, rising. "I'm going to take care of you in the future." Jenny heard this, and it pleased her. He was so well fitted, she thought, to do wondrous things. He was nothing less than a veritable magician. She looked about her, and the thought of coming into such a life and such an atmosphere was heavenly. Not that she fully understood his meaning, however. He meant to be good and generous and to give her fine things. Naturally, she was happy. She took up the package that she had come for, not seeing or feeling the incongruity of her position, while he felt it as a direct reproof. She ought not to carry that, he thought. A great wave of sympathy swept over him. He took her cheeks between his hands, this time in a superior and more generous way. "Never mind, little girl," he said. "You won't have to do this always. I'll see what I can do." The outcome of this was simply a more sympathetic relationship between them. He did not hesitate to ask her to sit beside him on the arm of his chair the next time she came, and to question her intimately about the family's condition and her own desires. Several times he noticed that she was evading his questions, particularly in regard to what her father was doing. She was ashamed to own that he was sawing wood. Fearing lest something more serious was impending, he decided to go out some day and see for himself. This he did when a convenient morning presented itself and his other duties did not press upon him. It was 3 days before the great fight in the legislature began, which ended in his defeat. Nothing could be done in these few remaining days, so he took his cane and strolled forth, coming to the cottage in the course of a half-hour and knocked boldly at the door. Mrs. Gerhardt opened it. "Good morning," he said, cheerily. Then, seeing her hesitate, he added, "May I come in?" The good mother, who was all but overcome by his astonishing presence, wiped her hands furtively upon her much-mended apron, and seeing that he waited for a reply, said, "Oh yes, come right in." She hurried forward, forgetting to close the door, and offering him a chair, asked him to be seated. Brander, feeling sorry that he was the occasion of so much confusion, said, "Don't trouble yourself, Mrs. Gerhardt. I was passing and I thought I'd come in. How's your husband?" "He's well, thank you," returned the mother. "He's out working today." "Then he has found employment?" "Yes, sir," said Mrs. Gerhardt, who hesitated, like Jennie, to say what it was. "The children are all well now and in school, I hope?" "Yes," replied Mrs. Gerhardt. She had now unfastened her apron and was nervously turning it in her lap. "That's good. And where's Jennie?" The latter, who had been ironing, had abandoned the board and had concealed herself in the bedroom, where she was busy tidying herself in the fear that her mother would not have the forethought to say that she was out, and so let her have a chance for escape. "She's here," returned the mother. "I'll call her." "What did you tell him I was here for?" said Jennie weakly. "What could I do?" asked the mother. Together, they hesitated while the senator surveyed the room. He felt sorry to think that such deserving people must suffer so. He intended, in a vague way, to ameliorate their condition if possible. "Good morning," the senator said to Jennie, when finally she came hesitatingly into the room. "How do you do today?" Jennie came forward, extending her hand and blushing. She found herself so much disturbed by this visit that she could hardly find tongue to answer his questions. "I thought," he said, "I'd come out and find where you live. This is quite a comfortable house. How many rooms have you?" "5," said Jennie. "You'll have to excuse the looks this morning. We've been ironing and it's all upset." "I know," said Brander gently. Don't you think I understand, Jennie? You mustn't feel nervous about me." She noticed the comforting personal tone he always used with her when she was at his room, and it helped to subdue her flustered senses. "You mustn't think it anything if I come here occasionally. I intend to come. I want to meet your father." "Oh," said Jennie. He's out today." While they were talking, however, the honest woodcutter was coming in at the gate with his buck and saw. Brander saw him, and at once recognized him by a slight resemblance to his daughter. "There he is now, I believe," he said. "Oh, is he?" said Jennie, looking out. Gerhardt, who was given to speculation these days, passed by the window without looking up. He put his wooden buck down, and hanging his saw on a nail on the side of the house, came in. "Mother," he called, in German, "Mutter," and then, not seeing her, he came to the door of the front room and looked in. Brander arose and extended his hand. The knotted and weather-beaten German came forward and took it with a very questioning expression of countenance. "This is my father, Mr. Brander," said Jennie, all her diffidence dissolved by sympathy. "This is the gentleman from the hotel, Papa, Mr. Brander." "What's the name?" said the German, turning his head. "Brander," said the senator. "Oh, yes," he said with a considerable German accent. "Since I had the fever, I don't hear good. My wife, she spoke to me of you." "Yes," said the senator. "I thought I'd come out and make your acquaintance. You have quite a family." "Yes," said the father, who was conscious of his very poor garments and anxious to get away. "I have 6 children, all young. She's the oldest girl." Mrs. Gerhardt now came back, and Gerhardt, seeing his chance, said hurriedly, "Well, if you'll excuse me, I'll go. I broke my saw, and so I had to stop work." "Certainly," said Brander graciously, realizing now why Jennie had never wanted to explain. He half wished that she were courageous enough not to conceal anything. "Well, Mrs. Gerhardt," he said, when the mother was stiffly seated, "I want to tell you that you mustn't look on me as a stranger. Hereafter, I want you to keep me informed of how things are going with you. Jennie won't always do it." Jennie smiled quietly. Mrs. Gerhardt only rubbed her hands. "Yes," she answered, humbly grateful. They talked for a few minutes, and then the senator rose. "Tell your husband," he said, "to come and see me next Monday at my office in the hotel. I want to do something for him." "Thank you," faltered Mrs. Gerhardt. "I'll not stay any longer now," he added. "Don't forget to have him come." "Oh, he'll come," she returned. Adjusting glove on one hand, he extended the other to Jennie. "Here's your finest treasure, Mrs. Gerhardt," he said. "I think I'll take her." "Well, I don't know," said her mother, "whether I could spare her or not." "Well," said the senator, going toward the door and giving Mrs. Gerhardt his hand. "Good morning." He nodded and walked out, while a half-dozen neighbors who had observed his entrance peeked from behind curtains and drawn blinds at the astonishing sight. "Who can that be, anyhow?" was the general query. "See what he gave me," said the innocent mother to her daughter the moment he had closed the door. It was a $10 bill. He had placed it softly in her hand as he said goodbye. Chapter 5. Having been led by circumstances into an attitude of obligation toward the senator, it was not unnatural that Jennie should become imbued with a most generous spirit of appreciation for everything he had done and now continued to do. The senator gave her father a letter to a local mill owner who saw that he received something to do. It was not much, to be sure, a mere job as night watchman, but it helped, and old Gerhardt's gratitude was extravagant. Never was there such a great, such a good man. Nor was Mrs. Gerhardt overlooked. Once Brander sent her a dress, and at another time a shawl. All these benefactions were made in a spirit of mingled charity and self-gratification, but to Mrs. Gerhardt they glowed with but one motive. Senator Brander was good-hearted. As for Jennie, he drew nearer to her in every possible way, so that at last she came to see him in a light which would require considerable analysis to make clear. This fresh, young soul, however, had too much innocence and buoyancy to consider for a moment the world's point of view. Since that one notable and halcyon visit upon which he had robbed her of her original shyness and implanted a tender kiss upon her cheek, they had lived in a different atmosphere. Jennie was his companion now, and as he more and more unbended and even joyously flung aside the habiliments of his dignity, her perception of him grew clearer. They laughed and chatted in a natural way, and he keenly enjoyed this new entrance into the radiant world of youthful happiness. One thing that disturbed him, however, was the occasional thought, which he could not repress, that he was not doing right. Other people must soon discover that he was not confining himself strictly to conventional relations with this washerwoman's daughter. He suspected that the housekeeper was not without knowledge that Jennie almost invariably lingered from a quarter to 3/4 of an hour whenever she came for or returned his laundry. He knew that it might come to the ears of the hotel clerks, and so, in a general way, get about town and work serious injury. But the reflection did not cause him to modify his conduct. Sometimes he consoled himself with the thought that he was not doing her any actual harm, and at other times he would argue that he could not put this one delightful tenderness out of his life. Did he not wish honestly to do her much good? He thought of these things occasionally, and decided that he could not stop. The self-approval which such a resolution might bring him was hardly worth the inevitable pain of abnegation. He had not so very many more years to live. Why die unsatisfied? One evening, he put his arm around her and strained her to his breast. Another time he drew her to his knee and told her of his life at Washington. Always now he had a caress and a kiss for her, but it was still in a tentative, uncertain way. He did not want to reach for her soul too deeply. Jennie enjoyed it all innocently. Elements of fancy and novelty entered into her life. She was an unsophisticated creature, emotional, totally inexperienced in the matter of the affections, and yet mature enough mentally to enjoy the attentions of this great man who had thus bowed from his high position to make friends with her. One evening she pushed his hair back from his forehead as she stood by his chair, and finding nothing else to do, took out his watch. The great man thrilled as he looked at her pretty innocence. "Would you like to have a watch too?" he asked. "Yes, indeed I would," said Jennie, with a deep breath. The next day he stopped as he was passing a jewelry store and bought one. It was gold, and had pretty ornamented hands. "Jennie," he said, when she came the next time, "I want to show you something. See what time it is by my watch." Jennie drew out the watch from his waistcoat pocket and started in surprise. "This isn't your watch," she exclaimed, her face full of innocent wonder. "No," he said, delighted with his little deception. "It's yours." "Mine!" exclaimed Jennie. "Mine? Oh, isn't it lovely?" "Do you think so?" he said. Her delight touched and pleased him immensely. Her face shone with light and her eyes fairly danced. "That's yours," he said. "See that you wear it now and don't lose it." "You're so good," she exclaimed. "No," he said, but he held her at arm's length by the waist to make up his mind what his reward should be. Slowly he drew her toward him until, when very close, she put her arms about his neck and laid her cheek in gratitude against his own. This was the quintessence of pleasure for him. He felt as he had been longing to feel for years. The progress of his idol suffered a check when the great senatorial fight came on in the legislature. Attacked by a combination of rivals, Brander was given the fight of his life. To his amazement, he discovered that a great railroad corporation, which had always been friendly, was secretly throwing its strength in behalf of an already too powerful candidate. Shocked by this defection, he was thrown alternately into the deepest gloom and into paroxysms of wrath. These slings of fortune, however lightly he pretended to receive them, never failed to lacerate him. It had been long since he had suffered a defeat. Too long. During this period, Jennie received her earliest lesson in the vagaries of men. For 2 weeks she did not even see him. And one evening, after an extremely comfortless conference with his leader, he met her with the most chilling formality. When she knocked at his door, he only troubled to open it a foot, exclaiming almost harshly, "I can't bother about the clothes tonight. Come tomorrow." Jennie retreated, shocked and surprised by this reception. She did not know what to think of it. He was restored on the instant to his far-off mighty throne and left to rule in peace. Why should he not withdraw the light of his countenance if it pleased him? But why? A day or two later he repented mildly, but had no time to readjust matters. His washing was taken and delivered with considerable formality, and he went on toiling forgetfully, until at last he was miserably defeated by 2 votes. Astounded by this result, he lapsed into gloomy dejection of soul. What was he to do now? Into this atmosphere came Jennie, bringing with her the lightness and comfort of her own hopeful disposition. Nagged to desperation by his thoughts, Brander first talked to her to almost himself. But soon his distress imperceptibly took flight. He found himself actually smiling. "Oh, Jennie," he said, speaking to her as he might have done to a child, "youth is on your side. You possess the most valuable thing in life." "Do I?" "Yes, but you don't realize it. You never will until it's too late." "I love that girl," he thought to himself that night. "I wish I could have her with me always." But fortune had another fling for him to endure. It got about the hotel that Jennie was, to use the mildest expression, conducting herself strangely. A girl who carries washing must expect criticism if anything not befitting her station is observed in her apparel. Jennie was seen wearing the gold watch. Her mother was informed by the housekeeper of the state of things. "I thought I'd speak to you about it," she said. "People are talking. You better not let your daughter go to his room for the laundry." Mrs. Gerhardt was too astonished and hurt for utterance. Jennie had told her nothing, but even now she did not believe there was anything to tell. The watch had been both approved of and admired by her. She had not thought that it was endangering her daughter's reputation. Going home, she worried almost incessantly and talked with Jennie about it. The latter did not admit the implication that things had gone too far. In fact, she did not look at it in that light. She did not own, it is true, what really had happened while she was visiting the senator. "It's so terrible that people should begin to talk," said her mother. "Did you really stay so long in the room?" "I don't know," returned Jennie, compelled by her conscience to admit at least part of the truth. "Perhaps I did. He has never said anything out of the way to you, has he?" "No," answered her daughter, who did not attach any suspicion of evil to what had passed between them. If the mother had only gone on a little bit further, she might have learned more, but she was only too glad, for her own peace of mind, to hush the matter up. People were slandering a good man, that she knew. Jennie had been the least bit indiscreet. People were always so ready to talk. How could the poor girl, amid such unfortunate circumstances, do otherwise than she did? It made her cry to think of it. The result of it all was that she decided to get the washing herself. She came to his door the next Monday after this decision. Brander, who was expecting Jennie, was both surprised and disappointed. "Why," he said to her, "what has become of Jennie?" Having hoped that he would not notice, or at least not comment upon the change, Mrs. Gerhardt did not know what to say. She looked up at him weakly in her innocent, motherly way and said, "She couldn't come tonight." "Not ill, is she?" he inquired. "No." "I'm glad to hear that," he said resignedly. "How have you been?" Mrs. Gerhardt answered his kindly inquiries and departed. After she had gone, he got to thinking the matter over, and wondered what could have happened. It seemed rather odd that he should be wondering over it. On Saturday, however, when she returned the clothes, he felt that there must be something wrong. "What's the matter, Mrs. Gerhardt?" he inquired. "Has anything happened to your daughter?" "No, sir," she returned, too troubled to wish to deceive him. "Isn't she coming for the laundry any more?" I, I, ventured the mother, stammering in her perturbation. They've been talking about her," she at last forced herself to say. "Who has been talking?" he asked gravely. "The people here in the hotel." "Who? What people?" he interrupted, a touch of annoyance showing in his voice. "The housekeeper." "The housekeeper, eh?" he exclaimed. "What has she got to say?" The mother related to him her experience. "And she told you that, did she?" he remarked in wrath. "She ventures to trouble herself about my affairs, does she? I wonder people can't mind their own business without interfering with mine." "Your daughter, Mrs. Gerhardt, is perfectly safe with me. I have no intention of doing her an injury. It's a shame," he added indignantly, that a girl can't come to my room in this hotel without having her motive questioned. I'll look into this matter." "I hope you don't think that I have anything to do with it," said the mother apologetically. "I know you like Jennie and wouldn't injure her. You've done so much for her and all of us, Mr. Brander. I feel ashamed to keep her away." "That's all right, Mrs. Gerhardt," he said quietly. "You did perfectly right. I don't blame you in the least. It is the lying accusation passed about in this hotel that I object to. We'll see about that." Mrs. Gerhardt stood there, pale with excitement. She was afraid she had deeply offended this man who had done so much for them. If she could only say something, she thought, that would clear this matter up and make him feel that she was no tattler. Scandal was distressing to her. "I thought I was doing everything for the best," she said at last. "So you were," he replied. "I liked Jennie very much. I have always enjoyed her coming here. It is my intention to do well by her, but perhaps it will be better to keep her away, at least for the present." Again that evening the senator sat in his easy chair and brooded over this new development. Jennie was really much more precious to him than he had thought. Now that he had no hope of seeing her there any more, he began to realize how much these little visits of hers had meant. He thought the matter over very carefully, realized instantly that there was nothing to be done so far as the hotel gossip was concerned, and concluded that he had really placed the girl in a very unsatisfactory position. "Perhaps I had better end this little affair," he thought. "It isn't a wise thing to pursue." On the strength of this conclusion, he went to Washington and finished his term. Then he returned to Columbus to await the friendly recognition from the president, which was to send him upon some ministry abroad. Jennie had not been forgotten in the least. The longer he stayed away, the more eager he was to get back. When he was again permanently settled in his old quarters, he took up his cane one morning and strolled out in the direction of the cottage. Arriving there, he made up his mind to go in, and knocking at the door, he was greeted by Mrs. Gerhardt and her daughter with astonished and diffident smiles. He explained vaguely that he had been away, and mentioned his laundry as if that were the object of his visit. Then, when chance gave him a few moments with Jenny alone, he plunged in boldly. "How would you like to take a drive with me tomorrow evening?" he asked. "I'd like it," said Jenny, to whom the proposition was a glorious novelty. He smiled and patted her cheek, foolishly happy to see her again. Every day seemed to add to her beauty. Graced with her clean white apron, her shapely head crowned by the glory of her simply plaited hair, she was a pleasing sight for any man to look upon. He waited until Mrs. Gerhardt returned. Then, having accomplished the purpose of his visit, he arose. "I'm going to take your daughter out riding tomorrow evening," he explained. "I want to talk to her about her future." "Won't that be nice?" said the mother. She saw nothing incongruous in the proposal. They parted with smiles and much handshaking. "That man has the best heart," commented Mrs. Gerhardt. "Doesn't he always speak so nicely of you? He may help you to an education. You ought to be proud." "I am," said Jenny frankly. "I don't know whether we had better tell your father or not," concluded Mrs. Gerhardt. "He doesn't like for you to be out evenings." Finally, they decided not to tell him. He might not understand. Jenny was ready when he called. He could see by the weak-flamed, unpretentious parlor lamp that she was dressed for him, and that the occasion had called out the best she had. A pale lavender gingham, starched and ironed until it was a model of laundering, set off her pretty figure to perfection. There were little lace-edged cuffs and a rather high collar attached to it. She had no gloves, nor any jewelry, nor yet a jacket good enough to wear, but her hair was done up in such a dainty way that it set off her well-shaped head better than any hat, and the few ringlets that could escape crowned her as with a halo. When Brander suggested that she should wear a jacket, she hesitated a moment, and she went in and borrowed her mother's cape, a plain gray woolen one. Brander realized now that she had no jacket, and suffered keenly to think that she had contemplated going without one. She would have endured the raw night air, he thought, and said nothing of it. He looked at her and shook his head reflectively. Then they started, and he quickly forgot everything but the great fact that she was at his side. She talked with freedom and with a gentle, girlish enthusiasm that he found irresistibly charming. "Why, Jenny," he said, when she had called upon him to notice how soft the trees looked, where outlined dimly against the new rising moon they were touched with its yellow light. "You're a great one. I believe you would write poetry if you were schooled a little." "Do you suppose I could?" she asked innocently. "Do I suppose, little girl?" he said, taking her hand. "Do I suppose? Why, I know. You're the dearest little daydreamer in the world. Of course you could write poetry. You live it. You are poetry, my dear. Don't you worry about writing any." This eulogy touched her as nothing else possibly could have done. He was always saying such nice things. No one ever seemed to like or to appreciate her half as much as he did. And how good he was. Everybody said that, her own father. They rode still farther, until suddenly remembering, he said, "I wonder what time it is. Perhaps we had better be turning back. Have you your watch?" Jenny started, for this watch had been the one thing of which she had hoped he would not speak. Ever since he had returned, it had been on her mind. In his absence, the family finances had become so strained that she had been compelled to pawn it. Martha had got to that place in the matter of apparel where she could no longer go to school unless something new were provided for her. And so, after much discussion, it was decided that the watch must go. Bass took it, and after much argument with the local pawnbroker, he had been able to bring home $10. Mrs. Gerhardt expended the money upon her children and heaved a sigh of relief. Martha looked very much better. Naturally, Jennie was glad. Now, however, when the senator spoke of it, her hour of retribution seemed at hand. She actually trembled, and he noticed her discomfiture. "Why, Jennie," he said gently, "what made you start like that?" "Nothing," she answered. "Haven't you your watch?" She paused, for it seemed impossible to tell a deliberate falsehood. There was a strained silence. Then she said, with a voice that had too much of a sob in it for him not to suspect the truth, "No, sir." He persisted, and she confessed everything. "Well," he said, "dearest, don't feel badly about it. There never was such another girl. I'll get your watch for you. Hereafter, when you need anything, I want you to come to me, do you hear? I want you to promise me that. If I'm not here, I want you to write me. I'll always be in touch with you from now on. You will have my address. Just let me know and I'll help you, do you understand?" "Yes," said Jennie. "You'll promise to do that now, will you?" "Yes," she replied. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "Jennie," he said at last, the spring-like quality of the night moving him to a burst of feeling, "I've about decided that I can't do without you. Do you think you could make up your mind to live with me from now on?" Jennie looked away, not clearly understanding his words as he meant them. "I don't know," she said vaguely. "Well, you think about it," he said pleasantly. "I'm serious. Would you be willing to marry me and let me put you away in a seminary for a few years?" "Go away to school?" "Yes, after you marry me." "I guess so," she replied. Her mother came into her mind. Maybe she could help the family. He looked around at her and tried to make out the expression on her face. It was not dark. The moon was now above the trees in the east, and already the vast host of stars were paling before it. "Don't you care for me at all, Jennie?" he asked. "Yes." "You never come for my laundry anymore, though," he returned pathetically. It touched her to hear him say this. "I didn't do that," she answered. "I couldn't help it. Mother thought it was best." "So it was," he assented. "Don't feel badly. I was only joking with you. You'd be glad to come if you could, wouldn't you?" "Yes, I would," she answered frankly. He took her hand and pressed it so feelingly that all his kindly words seemed doubly emphasized to her. Reaching up impulsively, she put her arms about him. "You're so good to me," she said with the loving tone of a daughter. "You're my girl, Jennie," he said, with deep feeling. "I'd do anything in the world for you." Chapter 6. The father of this unfortunate family, William Gerhardt, was a man of considerable interest on his personal side. Born in the kingdom of Saxony, he had had character enough to oppose the army conscription iniquity and to flee in his 18th year to Paris. From there he had set forth for America, the land of promise. Arrived in this country, he had made his way by slow stages from New York to Philadelphia, and thence westward, working for a time in the various glass factories in Pennsylvania. In one romantic village of this new world, he had found his heart's ideal. With her, a simple American girl of German extraction, he had removed to Youngstown, and thence to Columbus, each time following a glass manufacturer by the name of Hammond, whose business prospered and waned by turns. Gerhardt was an honest man, and he liked to think that others appreciated his integrity. "William," his employer used to say to him, "I want you because I can trust you." And this, to him, was more than silver and gold. This honesty, like his religious convictions, was wholly due to inheritance. He had never reasoned about it. Father and grandfather before him were sturdy German artisans who had never cheated anybody out of a dollar, and this honesty of intention came into his veins undiminished. His Lutheran proclivities had been strengthened by years of church-going and the religious observances of home life. In his father's cottage, the influence of the Lutheran minister had been all-powerful. He had inherited the feeling that the Lutheran Church was a perfect institution, and that its teachings were of all importance when it came to the issue of the future life. His wife, nominally of the Mennonite faith, was quite willing to accept her husband's creed. And so, his household became a God-fearing one. Wherever they went, their first public step was to ally themselves with the local Lutheran church, and the minister was always a welcome guest in the Gerhardt home. Pastor Wundt, the shepherd of the Columbus church, was a sincere and ardent Christian, but his bigotry and hard and fast orthodoxy made him intolerant. He considered that the members of his flock were jeopardizing their eternal salvation if they danced, played cards, or went to theaters, and he did not hesitate to declare vociferously that hell was yawning for those who disobeyed his injunctions. Drinking, even temperately, was a sin. Smoking, well, he smoked himself. Right conduct in marriage, however, and innocence before that state were absolute essentials of Christian living. Let no one talk of salvation, he had said, for a daughter who had failed to keep her chastity unstained, or for the parents who, by negligence, had permitted her to fall. Hell was yawning for all such. You must walk the straight and narrow way if you would escape eternal punishment, and a just God was angry with sinners every day. Gerhardt and his wife, and also Jennie, accepted the doctrines of their church as expounded by Mr. Wundt without reserve. With Jennie, however, the assent was little more than nominal. Religion had as yet no striking hold upon her. It was a pleasant thing to know that there was a heaven, a fearsome one to realize that there was a hell. Young girls and boys ought to be proud and obey their parents. Otherwise, the whole religious problem was badly jumbled in her mind. Gerhardt was convinced that everything spoken from the pulpit of his church was literally true. Death and the future life were realities to him. Now that the years were slipping away and the problem of the world was becoming more and more inexplicable, he clung with pathetic anxiety to the doctrines which contained a solution. Oh, if he could only be so honest and upright that the Lord might have no excuse for ruling him out. He trembled not only for himself, but for his wife and children. Would he not someday be held responsible for them? Would not his own laxity and lack of system in inculcating the laws of eternal life to them end in his and their damnation? He pictured to himself the torments of hell, and wondered how it would be with him and his in the final hour. Naturally, such a deep religious feeling made him stern with his children. He was prone to scan with a narrow eye the pleasures and foibles of youthful desire. Jennie was never to have a lover if her father had any voice in the matter. Any flirtation with the youths she might meet upon the streets of Columbus could have no continuation in her home. Gerhardt forgot that he was once young himself, and looked only to the welfare of her spirit. So the senator was a novel factor in her life. When he first began to be a part of their family affairs, the conventional standards of Father Gerhardt proved untrustworthy. He had no means of judging such a character. This was no ordinary person coquetting with his pretty daughter. The manner in which the senator entered the family life was so original and so plausible that he became an active part before any one thought anything about it. Gerhardt himself was deceived, and expecting nothing but honor and profit to flow to the family from such a source, accepted the interest in the service and plodded peacefully on. His wife did not tell him of the many presents which had come before and since the wonderful Christmas. But one morning, as Gerhardt was coming home from his night work, a neighbor named Otto Weaver accosted him. "Gerhardt," he said, "I want to speak a word with you. As a friend of yours, I want to tell you what I hear. The neighbors, they talk now about the man who comes to see your daughter." "My daughter?" said Gerhardt, more puzzled and pained by this abrupt attack than mere words could indicate. "Whom do you mean? I don't know of anyone who comes to see my daughter." "No?" inquired Weaver, nearly as much as astonished as the recipient of his confidences. "The middle-aged man, with gray hair. He carries a cane sometimes. You don't know him?" Gerhardt racked his memory with a puzzled face. "They say he was a senator once," went on Weaver, doubtful of what he had got into. "I don't know." "Ah," returned Gerhardt, measurably relieved. "Senator Brander, yes. He has come sometimes. So, well, what of it?" "It is nothing," returned the neighbor. "Only they talk. He is no longer a young man, Your daughter, she goes out with him now a few times. These people, they see that, and now they talk about her. I thought you might want to know." Gerhardt was shocked to the depths of his being by these terrible words. People must have a reason for saying such things. Jennie and her mother were seriously at fault. Still, he did not hesitate to defend his daughter. "He is a friend of the family," he said confusedly. "People should not talk until they know. My daughter has done nothing." "That is so. It is nothing," continued Weaver. "People talk before they have any grounds. You and I are old friends. I thought you might want to know." Gerhardt stood there motionless another minute or so, that his jaw had fallen and a strange helplessness upon him. The world was such a grim thing to have antagonistic to you. Its opinions and good favor were so essential. How hard he had tried to live up to its rules. Why should it not be satisfied and let him alone? "I am glad you told me," he murmured as he started homeward. "I'll see about it. Goodbye." Gerhardt took the first opportunity to question his wife. "What is this about Senator Brander coming out to call on Jennie?" he asked in German. "The neighbors are talking about it." "Why, nothing," answered Mrs. Gerhardt in the same language. She was decidedly taken aback at his question. "He did call 2 or 3 times." "You didn't tell me that," he returned, a sense of her frailty in tolerating and shielding such weakness in one of their children irritating him. "No," she replied, absolutely nonplussed. "He has only been here 2 or 3 times." "2 or 3 times?" exclaimed Gerhardt, the German tendency to talk loud coming upon him. "2 or 3 times? The whole neighborhood talks about it. What is this, then?" "He only called 2 or 3 times," Mrs. Gerhardt repeated weakly. "Weaver comes to me on the street," continued Gerhardt, "and tells me that my neighbors are talking of the man my daughter is going with. I didn't know anything about it. There I stood. I didn't know what to say. What kind of a way is that? What must the man think of me?" "There is nothing the matter," declared the mother, using an effective German idiom. "Jennie has gone walking with him once or twice. He has called here at the house. What is there now in that for the people to talk about? Can't the girl have any pleasure at all?" "But he is an old man," returned Gerhardt, voicing the words of Weaver. He is a public citizen. What should he want to call on a girl like Jenny for? I don't know, said Mrs. Gerhardt defensively. He comes here to the house. I don't know anything but good about the man. Can I tell him not to come? Gerhardt paused at this. All that he knew of the senator was excellent. What was there now that was so terrible about it? The neighbors are so ready to talk. They haven't got anything else to talk about now, so they talk about Jenny. You know, whether she is a good girl or not, why should they say such things? And tears came into the soft little mother's eyes. It is all right, grumbled Gerhardt, but he ought not to want to come around and take a girl of her age out walking. It looks bad, even if he don't mean any harm. At this moment, Jenny came in. She had heard the talking in the front bedroom where she slept with one of the children, but had not suspected its import. Now her mother turned her back and bent over the table where she was making biscuit, in order that her daughter might not see her red eyes. "What's the matter?" she inquired, vaguely troubled by the tense stillness and the attitude of both her parents. "Nothing," said Gerhardt firmly. Mrs. Gerhardt made no sign, but her very immobility told something. Jenny went over to her and quickly discovered that she had been weeping. "What's the matter?" she repeated wonderingly, gazing at her father. Gerhardt only stood there, his daughter's innocence dominating his terror of evil. "What's the matter?" she urged softly of her mother. "Oh, it's the neighbors," returned the mother brokenly. "They're always ready to talk about something they don't know anything about." "Is it me again?" inquired Jenny, her face flushing faintly. "You see," observed Gerhardt, apparently addressing the world in general, "she knows. Now, why didn't you tell me that he was coming here? The neighbors talk, and I hear nothing about it until today. What kind of a way is that, anyhow?" "Oh," exclaimed Jenny, out of the purest sympathy for her mother. "What difference does it make?" "What difference?" cried Gerhardt, still talking in German, although Jenny answered in English. "Is it no difference that men stop me on the street and speak of it? You should be ashamed of yourself to say that. I always thought well of this man, but now, since you don't tell me about him and the neighbors talk, I don't know what to think. Must I get my knowledge of what is going on in my own home from my neighbors?" Mother and daughter paused. Jenny had already begun to think that their error was serious. "I didn't keep anything from you because it was evil," she said. "Why, he only took me out riding once." "Yes, but you didn't tell me that," answered her father. "You know you don't like for me to go out after dark," replied Jenny. "That's why I didn't. There wasn't anything else to hide about it." "He shouldn't want you to go out after dark with him," observed Gerhardt, always mindful of the world outside. "What can he want with you? Why does he come here? He is too old anyhow. I don't think you ought to have anything to do with him, such a young girl as you are." "He doesn't want anything except help to me," murmured Jenny. "He wants to marry me." "Marry you? Why doesn't he tell me that?" exclaimed Gerhardt. "I shall look into this. I won't have him running around with my daughter and the neighbors talking. Besides, he is too old. I shall tell him that. He ought to know better than to put a girl where she gets talked about. It is better he should stay away altogether." This threat of Gerhardt's that he would tell Brander to stay away seemed simply terrible to Jenny and to her mother. What good can come of any such attitude? Why must they be degraded before him? Of course, Brander did call again while Gerhardt was away at work, and they trembled lest the father should hear of it. A few days later, the senator came and took Jenny for a long walk. Neither she nor her mother said anything to Gerhardt, but he was not to be put off the scent for long. "Has Jenny been out again with that man?" he inquired of Mrs. Gerhardt the next evening. "He was here last night," returned the mother evasively. "Did she tell him he shouldn't come any more?" "I don't know. I don't think so." "Well, now I will see for myself once whether this thing will be stopped or not," said the determined father. "I shall talk with him. Wait till he comes again." In accordance with this, he took occasion to come up from his factory on 3 different evenings, each time carefully surveying the house in order to discover whether any visitor was being entertained. On the 4th evening, Brander came, and inquiring for Jenny, who was exceedingly nervous, he took her out for a walk. She was afraid of her father, lest some unseemly thing should happen, but did not know exactly what to do. Gerhardt, who was on his way to the house at the time, observed her departure. That was enough for him. Walking deliberately in upon his wife, he said, "Where is Jenny?" "She's out somewhere," said her mother. "Yes, I know where," said Gerhardt. "I saw her. Now wait till she comes home. I will tell him." He sat down calmly, reading a German paper and keeping an eye upon his wife until, at last, the gate clicked and the front door opened. Then he got up. "Where have you been?" he exclaimed in German. Brander, who had not suspected that any trouble of this character was pending, felt irritated and uncomfortable. Jenny was covered with confusion. Her mother was suffering an agony of torment in the kitchen. "Why, I have been out for a walk," she answered confusedly. "Didn't I tell you not to go out any more after dark?" said Gerhardt, utterly ignoring Brander. Jenny colored furiously, unable to speak a word. "What is the trouble?" inquired Brander gravely. "Why should you talk to her like that?" "She should not go out after dark," returned the father rudely. "I have told her 2 or 3 times now. I don't think you ought to come here any more either." "And why?" asked the senator, pausing to consider and choose his words. "Isn't this rather peculiar? What has your daughter done?" "What has she done?" exclaimed Gerhardt, his excitement growing under the strain he was enduring and speaking almost unaccented English in consequence. "She is running around in the streets at night when she oughtn't to be. I don't want my daughter taken out after dark by a man of your age. What do you want with her anyway? She's only a child yet." "Want?" said the senator, straining to regain his ruffled dignity. "I want to talk with her, of course. She is old enough to be interesting to me. I want to marry her if she will have me." "I want you to go out of here and stay out of here," returned the father, losing all sense of logic and descending to the ordinary level of parental compulsion. "I don't want you to come around my house anymore. I have enough trouble without my daughter being taken out and given a bad name." "I tell you frankly," said the senator, drawing himself up to his full height, "that you will have to make clear your meaning. I have done nothing that I am ashamed of. Your daughter has not come to any harm through me. Now, I want you to know what you mean by conducting yourself in this manner. I want to know what you mean by conducting yourself in this manner." "I mean," said Gerhardt, excitedly repeating himself, I mean that the whole neighborhood talks about how you come around here and have buggy rides and walks with my daughter when I am not here. That's what I mean. I mean that you are no man of honorable intentions, or you would not come taking up with a little girl who is only old enough to be your daughter. People tell me well enough what you are. Just you go and leave my daughter alone." "People," said the senator. "Well, I care nothing for your people. I love your daughter, and I am here to see her because I do love her. It is my intention to marry her, and if your neighbors have anything to say to that, let them say it. There is no reason why you should conduct yourself in this manner before you know what my intentions are." Unnerved by this unexpected and terrible altercation, Jenny had backed away to the door leading out into the dining room, and her mother, seeing her, came forward. "Oh," said the latter, breathing excitedly, "he came home when you were away. What shall we do?" They clung together as women do and wept silently. The dispute continued. "Mary, eh?" exclaimed the father. "Is that it?" "Yes," said the senator. "Mary, that is exactly it. Your daughter is 18 years of age and can decide for herself. You have insulted me and outraged your daughter's feelings. Now I wish you to know that it cannot stop here. If you have any cause to say anything against me outside of mere hearsay, I wish you to say it." The senator stood before him, a very citadel of righteousness. He was neither loud-voiced nor angry-mannered, but there was a tightness about his lips which bespoke the man of force and determination. "I don't want to talk to you any more," returned Gerhardt, who was checked out but not overawed. "My daughter is my daughter. I am the one who will say whether she shall go out at night or whether she shall marry you either. I know what you politicians are. When I first met you, I thought you were a fine man. But now, since I see the way you conduct yourself with my daughter, I don't want to have anything more to do with you. Just you go. Stay away from here. That's all I ask of you." "I'm sorry, Mrs. Gerhardt," said Brander, turning deliberately away from the angry father, "to have had such an argument in your home. I had no idea that your husband was opposed to my visits. However, I will leave the matter as it stands for the present. You must not take all this as badly as it seems." Gerhardt looked on in astonishment at his coolness. "I will go now," he said, again addressing Gerhardt, "but you mustn't think that I am leaving this matter for good. You have made a serious mistake this evening. I hope you will realize that. I bid you good night." He bowed slightly and went out. Gerhardt closed the door firmly. "Now," he said, turning to his daughter and wife, "we will see whether we are rid of him or not. I will show you how to go after night upon the streets when everybody is talking already." In so far as words were concerned, the argument ceased, but looks and feelings ran strong and deep. And for days thereafter scarcely a word was spoken in the little cottage. Gerhardt began to brood over the fact that he had accepted his place from the senator and decided to give it up. He made it known that no more of the senator's washing was to be done in their house, and if he had not been sure that Mrs. Gerhardt's hotel work was due to her own efforts in finding it, he would have stopped that. No good would come of it, anyway. If she had never gone to the hotel, all this talk would never have come upon them. As for the senator, he went away decidedly ruffled by this crude occurrence. Neighborhood slanders are bad enough on their own plane, but for a man of his standing to descend and become involved in one struck him now as being a little unworthy. He did not know what to do about the situation. And while he was trying to come to some decision, several days went by. Then he was called to Washington, and he went away without having seen Jennie again. In the meantime, the Gerhardt family struggled along as before. They were poor indeed, but Gerhardt was willing to face poverty if only it could be endured with honor. The grocery bills were of the same size, however. The children's clothing was steadily wearing out. Economy had to be practiced, and payments stopped in old bills that Gerhardt was trying to adjust. Then came a day when the annual interest on the mortgage was due, and yet another when 2 different grocery men met Gerhardt on the street and asked about their little bills. He did not hesitate to explain just what the situation was and to tell them with convincing honesty that he would try hard and do the best he could. But his spirit was unstrung by his misfortunes. He prayed for the favor of heaven while at his labor and did not hesitate to use the daylight hours that he should have had for sleeping to go about, either looking for a more remunerative position or to obtain such little jobs as he could now and then to pick up. One of them was that of cutting grass. Mrs. Gerhardt protested that he was killing himself, but he explained his procedure by pointing to their necessity. When people stop me on the street and ask me for money, I have no time to sleep. It was a distressing situation for all of them. To cap it all, Sebastian got in jail. It was that old coal-stealing ruse of his practiced once too often. He got up on a car one evening while Jennie and the children waited for him, and a railroad detective arrested him. There had been a good deal of coal stealing during the past 2 years, but so long as it was confined to moderate quantities, the railroad took no notice. When, however, customers of shippers complained that cars from the Pennsylvania fields lost thousands of pounds in transit to Cleveland, Cincinnati, Chicago, and other points, detectives were set to work. Gerhardt's children were not the only ones who preyed upon the railroad in this way. Other families in Columbus, many of them, were constantly doing the same thing. But Sebastian happened to be seized upon as the Columbus example. "You come off that car now," said the detective, suddenly appearing out of the shadow. Jennie and the other children dropped their baskets and buckets and fled for their lives. Sebastian's first impulse was to jump and run, but when he tried it, the detective grabbed him by the coat. "Hold on there," he exclaimed. "I want you." "Aw, let go," said Sebastian savagely, for he was no weakling. There was nerve and determination in him, as well as a keen sense of his awkward predicament. "Let go, I tell you," he reiterated, and giving a jerk, he almost upset his captor. "Come here now," said the detective, pulling him viciously in an effort to establish his authority. Sebastian came, but it was with a blow which staggered his adversary. There was more struggling, and then a passing railroad hand came to the detective's assistance. Together they hurried him toward the depot, and there, discovering the local officer, turned him over. It was a torn coat, scarred hands and face, and a black eye that Sebastian was locked up for the night. When the children came home, they could not say what had happened to their brother, but as 9 o'clock struck, and then 10 and 11, and Sebastian did not return, Mrs. Gerhardt was beside herself. He had stayed out many a night as late as 12 and 1, but his mother had a foreboding of something terrible tonight. When 1:30 arrived and no Sebastian, she began to cry. "Someone ought to go up and tell your father," she said. "He may be in jail." Jennie volunteered, but George, who was soundly sleeping, was awakened to go along with her. "What?" said Gerhardt, astonished to see his 2 children. "Bass hasn't come yet," said Jennie, and then told the story of the evening's adventure in explanation. Gerhardt left his work at once, walking back with his 2 children to a point where he could turn off to go to the jail. He guessed what had happened, and his heart was troubled. "Is that so now?" he repeated nervously, rubbing his clumsy hands across his wet forehead. Arrived at the station house, the sergeant in charge told curtly that Bass was under arrest. "Sebastian Gerhardt?" he said, looking over his blotter. "Ah, yes, here he is. Stealing coal and resisting an officer. Is he your boy?" "Oh my," said Gerhardt. "Oh God." He actually wrung his hands in distress. "Want to see him?" asked the sergeant. Yes, said the father. "Take him back, Fred," said the other to the old watchman in charge, "and let him see the boy." When Gerhardt stood in the back room and Sebastian was brought out, all marked and tousled, he broke down and began to cry. No word could cross his lips because of his emotion. "Don't cry, Pop," said Sebastian bravely. "I couldn't help it. It's all right, I'll be out in the morning." Gerhardt only shook with his grief. "Don't cry," continued Sebastian, doing his very best to restrain his own tears. "It'll be all right. What's the use of crying?" I know, said the gray-headed parent brokenly, "but I can't help it. It is my fault that I should let you do that." No, No, it isn't, said Sebastian. You couldn't help it. Does Mother know anything about it? Yes, she knows, he returned. Jennie and George just came up where I was and told me. I didn't know anything about it until just now, and he began to cry again. Well, don't you feel badly, went on Bass, the finest part of his nature coming to the surface. It'll be all right. Just you go back to work now and don't worry, I'll be all right. How did you hurt your eye? Asked the father, looking at him with red eyes. Oh, I had a little wrestling match with the man who nabbed me, said the boy, smiling bravely. I thought I could get away. You shouldn't do that, Sebastian, said the father. It may go harder on you with that account. It may go harder with you on that account. When does your case come up? In the morning, they told me, said Bass, 9 o'clock. Gerhardt stayed with his son for some time and discussed the question of bail, fine, and the dire possibility of a jail sentence without arriving at any definite conclusion. Finally, he was persuaded by Bass to go away, but the departure was the occasion for another outburst of feeling. He was led away, shaking and broken with emotion. It's pretty tough, said Bass to himself as he was led back to his cell. He was thinking solely of his father. I wonder what Ma will think. The thought of this touched him tenderly. I wish I'd knocked the dub over the first crack, he said. What a fool I was not to get away.